best or suits me best to do my work, to get things done. And that makes actually activity-based working a hybrid method by definition. But this gives you a total overview. But when you move something in a way of working, you find out that there's actually a system of correlated parts. And you really start to realize that the way we lead organizations has a very much big impact on the way we structure our work and on the way we work. The same is true with culture. Culture is very strong in having an influence on the way we work together. But what is actually the issue we are facing? Actually, to make it very simple, what happened? We switched the physical workplace off. That is what happened when the pandemic came. And you can ask yourself the question, what's the reason we maybe feel so uncomfortable about it? Has the work we do changed? No. Has the process of the way we do our work actually changed? If we look close to it, no. Or has the position changed in the way we do our work? Yeah, just the fact that we work from home much more, but not really. And so we have to realize that it's not strange that we feel uncomfortable, but actually a very fundamental fact has been challenged or disrupted, and this total perspective of how we look to work. Because now all of a sudden we find out that we are able to work from home, that we have all the technology in place. We really start to question things. What's the meaning of the physical interaction? When do I need a physical interaction? What sort of contracts do we have? How can we do it differently? So it's maybe that's the reason why we have this uncomfortable feeling about this current moment, because it's really totally fundamental disrupted the whole way we used to look to work. But why is this actually an issue? The questions we have is at the moment, if you talk about engagement we have with clients, is you recognize maybe this question: are we going back to the office? Is it going to be hybrid? What exactly is hybrid? What sort of combination should we make between working from home, working from the office? Who needs to go to the office, etc., etc. And if you talk with leaders, if it's a CHRO, a CIO, a CEO, or a facility manager, or somebody from real estate services, we all get different answers. It's like we don't speak the same language. It's like everybody has a different opinion about what we need to do. And I really think we should start a discussion about actually who owns the way of working as a topic. I think that's actually where we need to find a sort of common ground. The way of working, who owns it? So, but how can we solve this? So last time I was spoken with CHRO, and the issue we had at hand is the fact that she had just a meeting with the Workers' Council. There was a big survey, and the survey let see the amount of people who wanted to work from home. They were actually a little bit taken by surprise by the large group of people who really like to work from home and the amount of days they wanted to work from home. Versus senior leaders, the CEO, who said, I want to have everybody back at the office. That's a serious question. Imagine how can you deal with this? Or on the other hand, a facility manager of a large site, we had a discussion with him, and she said, okay, we need to open up a little thing, the offices. So we just gave some space to the different departments, and we had a discussion, but really, who really needs to go to the office? Or imagine you have a site and you have a discussion with HR about the fact of productivity. So maybe as the manager said in this case, okay, I see the productivity is going down because I get less reports. On the other side, the HR people said, I see that people you are working with have a too much high workload. So how can we bring this sort of discussions to the table? So imagine you would have a sort of bird's eye view on everyday's objective behavioral data that could help you to answer these questions and to have a real conversation with this objective data. And I think this is going to be a very important topic. Why? Because one of the things we see now also fueling this uncertainty, this feeling, is the fact that we don't see each other anymore all the time. But what if we have this bird's eye view on this objective behavioral data? This really could help us in the conversation. So to make it very practical, how do we use this and how do we help our clients with this? First of all, it starts with a question. And we always use use cases because use cases make things very tangible, very concrete. So what's actually the question we have? Think about the example about the Workers' Council and HR versus the CEO. So what's actually the question? The question is the CEO wants something, but why does he want everybody to come back to the office? And if you start to peel this off, very often you see, because I'm used to it and my managers want this as well, versus the employees who come with the argument, yeah, we want to work from home, we are much more productive. So it's very important in the first step to make this question very, very clear in the form of a use case. And in this use case, you also try to make it actionable, which means that if you get the answers, so if you get the insights, that you act upon it. Secondly, but what do we need to know? Because there's so much available. So it's very important that if you have this question, that you start a discussion about what sort of information do we need to really answer this question. So what's the least amount of things we need to know to give the answer? To go to a third step, and this is a very important one. Sometimes it's called the elephant in the room. It's really important if you start to work with this sort of data to involve your privacy officer and to involve employees. It's very important to create transparency. It's very important to share what you want to do, and then the use case comes in, why you want to do this. So then you can make the next step, and it is to get the trend data. So it's important to realize it's not about all the individual data. Absolutely not important. It's even not possible if you, for instance, use Microsoft Workplace Analytics, but it's also not important. It's all about the trends. It's all about the trends to make a discussion more tangible, to move from all the different opinions on the table towards a situation where we really can discuss it based on objective data. So what happens if we are able to do this, something very beautiful, because we start to speak the same language. To objectify the discussions we have and use data in this discussion, we can start to talk the same language. And actually, it's maybe sometimes like a short circuit between the people on the floor and the board, because all of a sudden it becomes clear what's really going on. It becomes clear where people are putting their time. It becomes clear which departments do have such a high workload that they are not able to get things done. It becomes clear our employees have no time to get their work done. And the thing is very important, that's the point I want to make as well. This is a topic, the way of working, that's a topic we all are in together. I think we are all the owner of this topic, which becomes very clear if you talk about data. This is something which is our responsibility. So I think just mentioning these few things, the way forward is data-driven, activity-based working. Back to the entrance of this webinar, when we talked about empowering employees, about right-sizing offices, I think it's very clear that if you talk about activity-based working, that's a very proper way to discuss the space you use in an office and how you use an office to optimize it in such a manner that it supports the activities employees doing. While on the other hand, using a data perspective on it, from a bird's eye perspective, talking about the trends, finding ways to free up time so that employees will be more empowered to do their things. So from there on, I really want to wrap it up now, to have some time for the discussion left. It's actually sort of, call for action for you. I think together we really can make a difference. But how can we do that? I think, first of all, it's important to realize that the way of working is too important to leave to somebody else. We all need to feel responsible for it. So I really would like to ask to all of you to start a discussion at where you are working about the way of working and who owns it, and that we should be the owner, that we should be an owner together. Secondly, maybe very scary, but dare to learn the language. Dare to learn the language of data so that we can communicate with each other on the same grounds. See it as a sort of Esperanto of the hybrid of activity-based working. So dare to learn the language. And on that way, let's create together a better world of work. Thank you, and let's continue the conversation.
Thank you very much. So everyone, I think I've now opened the chat so that everyone can see it. I've done a bit of technology checking whilst Marco's been speaking. And Marco, thank you very much for that. There's some observations actually that someone said. Work is occupation. We are designed to find meaning in occupation, paid or not, which I thought was quite an interesting observation. And someone said, I work to achieve, to make a difference.
I love the last one.
Yeah, it's very good. So a question for you, Marco. Doesn't this allow for potential of spying software by employees on their staff?
Yeah, and that's the reason why I said that's absolutely not the idea behind this. So the example I use is about workplace analytics from Microsoft. This is not a spying software. It's even not possible to spy because you can't drill down to smaller groups. So that means that you can't see individual things. So it's not designed for spying. It's even not possible to spy. Secondly, it's also the reason why we in the approach, first of all, start with a use case to have a proper case. What are we going to do and why? And then immediately involve the privacy officer and the employees to communicate and to make it transparent. We do this for a better goal. We do this to get insights in trends. So not individual data, we want to get insights in trends and to see where we can improve things. So for instance, so that we can see where we can free up time. What are the big meetings which cost us so much time that we're not able to get our things done, which are really pushing our work week span to extremes. So we use it for the better good, for a better, for empowering the employees. And you need to be very open in this, you need to communicate in it. And that's also the reason why I called everybody to start to learn the language, because if you understand the language, you feel much more comfortable.
Great, thank you. Marco, also, if you could stop sharing your screen, that would be good, so we can see you on the big screen, that would be good. So I have another question for you. Are there any key trends you have seen in activity-based working and the mix of spaces that different companies are now including in their plans for the future workplaces?
It's a good question. What we see now is quite a lot of discussion about what will happen after opening up. And we see a sort of tendency that the very intensive collaboration activities will take place at the office. But it's very important in this discussion to realize the fact that there is no one size fits all. Because last year we did a big study, because like I said, this is one of the biggest social experiments we have ever seen. Working from home is not new, but what's happening now, the way we work from home, is absolutely new. There is no business case, there is no study. So when we performed the study, we wanted to understand the experience pros and cons of employees working from home, and we were able to get survey data of 5,000 employees. And the thing is, what we saw is that employees really appreciate working from home. But on the other side, so the pros were bigger than the cons. A lot of the cons we can solve them. But what we also saw when we looked at the data, that one size fits all doesn't exist. So that really means that in designing new offices, you will have a sort of trend line more about people who like to work from home, They do specific activities from home where they, if it's suitable, and other activities at the office. And under that, there will be a trend mixed with employees who really like to work from the office. And that can be sometimes a very logical argument. For instance, if somebody wants to work from home because the social interaction he or she doesn't have at home, or just has no place at home to do the work because it's not big enough or whatever. So you really have to look at the total playing field to come to a new sort of design.
Thank you. There was one that was interesting actually. Are there any good, I've lost it now actually, do you have an example of questions that should be asked when you are discussing activity-based working with employees?
Yeah, what we do is actually in the processes, if you move forward to new ways of working, so that, what will happen after opening up, it's very important to get a very good, sharp image of what are the activities we are doing. And what you see is those activities actually are a little bit changing. You see the organizations also use this, this current situation to move more towards collaboration, breaking down silos, really finding ways to do more with experiments. So they really use this development to set up different settings in the offices to get much more the collaboration and within the teams. That's what you see very clear. Did I answer the question? So
yeah, you did. So that's fine. And Bertie and Oliver, if you want to pick up the ones, there's also a Q&A section as well. So Bertie and Oliver, if you want to pick those up in the Q&A, that would be good. But there was another one here that what is the data that's important when you're looking at having discussions on activity-based working? What are the types of data that are generally available and also useful? Because lots of data is available, but it's not always useful.
That's also a good question. Actually, we use two different sort of streams of data. We use objective data I just mentioned about. That's very much data that gives an insight in collaboration patterns. And this is very objective data. And we combine that with survey data. And the survey data gives us a very good insight in maturity of teams. We have parts of our surveys to give a very good insight and detailed insights in the different sort of activities. And if we combine this data, we can start a discussion about where are we now and where do you want to go to and where do we need to intervene during the change management process. So bottom line, you use different types of data, objective data and survey data. And the third thing is we already have quite a lot of experience with implementing activity-based working. So we have a very good sense about what is happening in organizations, and we can make it very tangible and very sharp in the discussions we have with senior leaders.
Thank you. Oliver, do you want to pick up the question from the Q&A, please?
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for that, Marco. We have a question. James Rutherford, he asks, could we discuss the potential cost savings of office space that could be realized with better technology and working?
Okay, how much, what will the cost saving be? I can't say now it will be 20%. It's very depending on the type of organization and the maturity of the organization. To be honest, there are organizations which really need to take time for this sort of transition. That means over there at the reduction you can realize takes some time. While other organizations are much more mature, have much more experience in remote management, so the management and maturity is very important. They have their technology in place, and they have, and therefore they are able to move much more faster and free up time. And secondly, it's very important to look at different sort of organizations, because for some organizations, the interaction between employees is very important to get their business goals. So there are different aspects you need to take in consideration to say something about what sort of savings you can realize. So sorry, I can't put a number on it, but there are different elements that really are important to take into consideration to say how much you can save.
Thank you very much, Marco.
Thank you. Bertie, you have a question from someone as well. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Marco. We get a question here from Antonio. Just to get some clarification, he asks, according to one of your slides, working from home is the most efficient and effective manner to work, followed by activity-based working. Moreover, kind of open offices are related to effectiveness, and traditional offices, assuming kind of cellular offices, are the most efficient ones. He then says this is kind of confusing him. And is this the case for every organization, or what do you mean by effectiveness and efficiency? Thank you.
It's good. Thanks for raising this question. What's very important to realize, if you look at this slide, are the two different viewpoints, central and decentral. What we see in the decentral part, so that's the central part, so where we are used to create offices, so places where we work together, and now when we move more to the offices like we know them now, it's very central organized. And if you look at those offices, there are actually two sorts of policies you see over there. One, there is a very strong focus on being more efficient. So what you see over there is that we try to find a way how we can put as many as possible people in an office. So if you look at the square meters and really focus on efficiency, while on the other hand, you see that there are ways to design an office where we look to being more effective. And what you see over there, if you look at that angle, we are looking to ways how can we open up floors so that people are able to collaborate with each other. The thing is, maybe you've seen such an open office space. It's sometimes very complicated to work in. Why? Because you're sitting there at your desk doing your focus work. People just drop in, ask you questions, you are disturbed. Or you go to a meeting, the space is still occupied, etc., etc. So you see some developments in a little bit more flex work, but actually those areas are not really supporting the different sort of activities. What we do with activity-based working is we try to combine the best of both worlds. So when we dive into understanding the real activities employees are doing, you see that there are different sort of activities, varying from doing focus work, doing more interactive, collaborative, or creative work. So there are different activities, and if you look at those activities, they have different areas where you can do them best. For example, a focus work can be done best in an area where it is quiet, where you will not be disturbed. Versus activities with creativity, you really want to have the interaction, so you want to have an area where you can make some noise, etc., etc. If you add this up, you see that activity-based working, if you look to it from an implementation perspective on the workplace, will be in the middle. So it is very effective usage of the floor, and it's very efficient. If you compare it with working from home, actually working from home is very effective and very efficient. That's from an individual standpoint. So what we see now is if you make the combination and start to discuss the hybrid way of working, you can make the combination between the two extremes. It's more central or decentral organized. And then you can switch between and make a decision upon which sort of activities do I want to do at a central location, let's call an office, or which activities do I do more at home. So, but the philosophy is always the same. What am I going to do? Who am I going to work with? And what's the best place to do this activity? And it can be at home. You can take those benefits versus the benefits of working in a setting more activity-based. Sorry, it's a long answer.
No, thank you very much. That's really good. There is an question from Jan Porch, and Jan, I want to wish you a happy retirement because I know Jan is retiring soon. We will miss you from the workplace well. As Jan asked, are we assuming that every office is going to do away with any form of social distancing at all, regardless of government guidance? I'm interested in your views.
I think that social, from one perspective, my personal opinion is that if I look to the whole effect of social distancing, I think what you see, if you look back in time, it really had a huge impact on how people behave. But I think we will go back to a new normal in a way where it will be normal to have the social interaction again. I don't know, maybe the virus will still be long in the place, so maybe it will be a longer standard. I don't know. I don't have some piece of glass where I can look into to see what will happen in the future. So bottom line, I think we will, if we look at the fact that we are human, and as humans we really need to have this physical interaction. It's part of who we are. So I think for sure we will find each other on some place, let's call it an office. We really need to engage with each other. But there is so much to learn if we look to the future. Because, for instance, we have no clue, for instance, what the impact is on the transactions cost due to the fact that we don't see each other that much anymore. Or how can we make sure that new people who are joining our organizations can be supported as best to get a good position in the office. So there is so much we need to learn, and I think we will be on this page maybe for a year, 2 years, to learn new things, how to deal with this, and how we need to work together.
Thank you. We still have some more in the Q&A. Oliver, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Hi, Marco, another one. This is from Phil Brown this time, and he believes that the office will become a hybrid hub where colleagues will meet 2 to 3 times a week to collaborate and ease the mental health issues that arise. Anything that you'd like to comment or add to that? Are you starting to see this?
And in the beginning you said hybrid, what did you said?
Like becoming a hybrid hub. So
hybrid. Yeah, sorry.
3 days a week.
Yeah, you see that happen, but again, it's depending very much on in which industry the organization is. It's depending very much on the maturity of the organization, how things will develop over time. But you can imagine, if you look a little bit also to hybrid way of working becomes sort of new term. It's being hyped anyway. With a sort of division between what can I do from home and what can I do from the office. And what we see when we engage with our clients is that there is a clear picture of what sort of activities can be done from home perfectly and what sort of activities can be done from the office. And I really think that the interaction we really need as humans, but also to fasten up decision making, etc., is going to be very important. And the office place, let's call it an office or an hub, is becoming very important in that. I think we forget sometimes also the value of this sort of interaction, because it also really speeds up things. Because we can do a lot via Zoom or WebEx or another system. But the fact that if you know people, if you know where to find them, if you are able to meet each other, discuss things with each other, that's also speeding up things and makes it much more, I think much more effective. While other things can be done perfectly at home, definitely.
Great, thank you. Bertie, over to you.
Thank you very much. I've got a question here from Phil Stubbington, and he says, I'm currently reading Creativity Inc. about Pixar and Disney, and one of the themes is about personalization of workspaces. It says lots of companies seems very anti-enabling this customization and working out at a shared non-dedicated workspaces, especially if you're there only for a few hours per week or similar experiences. What he wants to know is what benefits do you actually see in personalization of a space, and what do you think is the future of that?
Oh, that's a nice question. I had this discussion at the beginning of last year. I was in Moscow. And the case over there is that when we visited that office, it was like every work center of every employee was a sort of personal cathedral, and that was the way of working. It really looked beautiful, by the way. And the whole thing is, if you really want to, but the thing is that if you work on that way, you're stuck on your own location. of course you move, but from a more cost efficiency perspective, it's not always the best direction. If you look from a more effective perspective, it's also not always the best solution. So if you create a place where you can use the environment in such a manner that it really supports your activities, you have both. It's being effective and it's being efficient. Coming back to the point of making it more personal, you can solve it very easily if you, for instance, use central places where you create your own totem pole. So, for instance, in this situation, the case I was telling about in Moscow, what we did is we created those spaces, but we had those centers where groups of teams were gathering a little bit together, and they had their own place where they could put their personal stuff on. What happened is, and it was very new to them, is that they had to open up their personality and start to communicate with their colleagues. Because previously it was very much closed into their own workplace, and now it was opened up. So what actually happened is that employees started to learn each other much more better than before, because they saw the pictures of the children, etc., etc. So you get actually it was very much supportive to breaking it up, to realize what we wanted to achieve. And it is not only being more effective and more efficient, but also to create this social connectivity in the organization. So you can find different solutions for this sort of questions. I hope this answers the question. I like the question, by the way. Thank you.
Marco, fantastic. There is a question, and there nearly always is on our webinars. What about co-working spaces, and what part do they play in all of this?
I think I can imagine that co-working places will be very important. We see it on different manners. I know from a client in, I think it's London, said, okay, the issue we have is that all the people need to travel with public transport towards our office in the city center. They don't want to travel with public transport. So can't we find a solution where we create hubs outside the city center where people can meet and collaborate? So I can imagine that in some sort of situations, a co-working space becomes very interesting. And the value of a co-working place is due to the fact that there is a place where there is social interaction. Secondly, that it can be on places which are much more physical accessible for the employees. Another example is in a co-working space, more people from different organizations. So one of the pluses is when I talked about the research we did last year, where we also saw people who said we want to go to the office because we miss the social part. A co-working place is maybe a very good answer to support those employees who need some buzz around them because they don't have that at home.
Thank you very much. One more round of questions from each of us. Ollie, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. This one's from Manal. What are the new pillars of efficient office space?
The new pillars of
efficient office space.
I think the efficiency, I think it's very obvious, is the fact that if we also combine working with working from home, so working outside the office, then we have quite a big efficiency. We saw that with previous assignments where we introduced new ways of working. In this case, it was very much focused on working from home, offering the solution to work from home, really supporting employees in that. Created a lot of extra free space in the offices we could reduce over time. The thing is, although, to really think smart about where your focus offices will be. But this is really a good manner also, not only from a sustainability perspective, but also a very good option to not only support employees in the way of working, but also to support the next step in reducing office space. So working from home, I think, will be a very important pillar in reducing office space.
Thank you. Bertie, over to you.
Great. I've got a question here from, I think it's Jaya. What is the best way to introduce new starters into the workplace with most staff working remotely? And how do we allow learning through observation and listening and jumping into meetings to learn?
Yeah, that's a very important question, because what we see is that I talked with several employees who just joined an organization but were never able to meet their own colleagues in real life. And they said to me it was very hard to get a position in the organization. So this is a very important topic. How do we make sure that employees who are joining the organization feel at home, feel comfortable, but are also able to get their place, to get their own social network? So there are a few options we see in practice. One is very practical, assigning a buddy. So that means that if there is somebody joining the organization, make sure he or she has a buddy who explains how the organization works, where he or she can go to with questions to get answers. That works very well. Secondly, what we also saw as an initiative more from HR is to make combinations. So people who are joining the organizations during the first few months, let them join different teams over time. Because what we see is that if you join an organization, especially now in the current situation, people within teams stay very close together, and you see a decrease in the connectivity between teams. So to make sure that new people join different teams over time, you make sure that this internal social network is growing. And that's bottom line, the most important part if you talk about the usage of data. Getting insights in the growth, the speed of growth of your social network is a very strong indicator of people are able to get on par in the organization. And secondly, we also see that the attention of a manager in one-on-one time is a very strong indicator or employees are onboarding fast enough. So bottom line, it's all about real attention for managers from the most important teams you're working with, and the speed of growth of your internal social network.
Marco, this has been outstanding. Thank you very much for your time. We have lots more questions. So what I've done, I've put your email address in the chat box. So if people want to contact you and ask them, and I would highlight the mention from David Madison that you can get the workplace right, but we've got to sort out the quality of the air in those buildings before we let everyone back. Really important. Marco, thank you very much for joining us. And thank you, everyone. Herman Miller, we will continue. Do check out hermanmiller.com as the website, and also hminsightgroup.com. We have webinars booked up until June now with a variety of speakers, and the link has been put in, but I'll put the link in again. Do join us, and we will send a follow-up email with lots of links that Marco has shared. Do connect with Marco on LinkedIn as well. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Really good to have you with us. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. You might want to stay and see all the thank yous coming in, Marco. I always quite like that.
Yeah, and thank you, Mark, for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us.